Revealed, the amazing truth about what owners couldn't do to slaves in ancient Rome, a touching journey of resilience and hope. Emma's heart raced as she flipped through the ancient leather-bound book she had unearthed in Cedar Creek's dusty old library. Each page was like peeling back layers of time, revealing the harrowing truths of slavery in ancient Rome. But it wasn't just the atrocities that gripped her, it was the stories of courage that fought back against the overwhelming darkness. She could almost hear the whispers of those long gone, urging her to share their tales. This was more than history, it was a vital connection to her own story, to her community, and to the struggles they faced today. As she sat at the library's wooden table, surrounded by towering shelves filled with books, Emma felt something transformative crackle in the air. She thought of her grandfather, his weather-beaten hands stained with years of labor, and how he taught her that hard work and perseverance could move mountains. She realized his lessons were much more than just survival tactics, they were the roots of a legacy she'd carry forward. But now, she wanted to dig deeper, uncover the truths that many preferred to ignore, the painful connections between the past and the present. Emma committed to creating a documentary that vividly illustrated these parallels. Yet, as she scoured local interviews and historical records, her excitement was met with skepticism. Friends would shrug, dismissing her efforts as too heavy for the town's delicate sensibilities, while her parents worried about the backlash she'd face if she stirred old wounds. They wanted her to play it safe, focusing on finished degrees rather than ruffling feathers. But Emma felt a fire within her, a sense that if she ignored these truths, she would undermine her own family's story. The fulfillment of her ancestry demanded honesty. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day of the documentary's premiere arrived with a mix of nerves and sheer determination. The annual community event had always brought families together, showcasing their homemade pies and local crafts, but this year felt different. As Emma stood in front of a gathering of her neighbors, anticipation thrummed through her veins. She introduced her documentary, her voice steady despite the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. As the film began, the room dimmed, the weight of history settled around them like a thick fog. Audience members watched, some leaning forward in their seats, others visibly uncomfortable. Her documentary, brimming with stories that linked Roman injustices to modern economic disparities, unleashed a storm of emotions. Tension crackled as a man shouted from the crowd, demanding they ignore the past to protect community pride. And there, buried in that moment of chaos, Emma felt the weight of her decision. Would they rise to examine their history or fold back into the comfort of ignorance? As murmurs filled the air, leaving the room teetering on the brink of revelation, Emma stood rooted in place, heart pounding. She could see the faces of everyone she loved: her father, her mother, the regulars from the diner. Would they learn, change, or remain stagnant? The question lingered like an echo, pulsating through her mind. Courage surged within her, this was only the beginning of a longer journey. The murmurs in the room swelled, a mix of curiosity and resentment. Emma's breath hitched as she searched for familiar faces in the crowd. Her father's brows were furrowed, a mix of confusion and concern etched on his features. And her mother looked down, as if trying to shield herself from the discomfort that seeped through the air. Emma's heart sank, her resolve wavering for a moment. But then, something shifted. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of Miss Marjorie, an older woman who lived down the street and had always supported Emma's endeavors. Miss Marjorie leaned forward, her eyes glimmering with interest. She'd lived through eras of change herself, and Emma felt that fierce connection, urging her to continue. Gathering her strength, Emma addressed the crowd once more. This documentary aims to honor those who fought for freedom, to awaken the truths we often bury. Our past shapes our present, ignoring it won't help us grow. We must confront it head-on. Her voice rang with conviction, each word punctuated by the weight of history. The man who had shouted before, Tom, sat back in his chair, his expression momentarily softened. There had always been a rift between his views and Emma's, but now she saw a flicker of curiosity there. Perhaps there was a way beyond the chaos, a bridge she could build. As the film concluded, a heavy silence cloaked the atmosphere. Then, slowly, conversations erupted, some expressing anger, others sharing tears. Emma felt a swell of emotions. People were reacting, they were engaging with the stories that needed to be told. She scanned the crowd, looking for allies and adversaries alike, ready to meet whatever would come next. Suddenly, someone raised their hand from the back. Emma, what we saw, it's uncomfortable. But maybe we need to be uncomfortable if we want to change. The voice belonged to Jacob, a classmate who once dismissed her ideas as too dramatic. His statement rippled through the room, and others began to nod their heads in agreement. There was an energy sparking through the audience, one she hadn't expected. Conversation blossomed, each voice adding to a tapestry of reflection and opening up dialogues that had been long buried under layers of silence. As the crowd began to break into various discussions, Emma felt a rush of hope. She hadn't just challenged their views, she had ignited a fire for change. But still, her heart raced with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. This was just their first step, and she knew deeper truths were waiting to be explored. The ramifications of her film were yet to fully unfold. Returning home that night, the shadows danced in her mind. Emma felt lighter yet aware of the responsibilities that surged within her. Would the community embrace this new path, or would they slip back into silence? And what of her family? Would they support her or draw back into their comfort zone? As she drifted into sleep, heavy with the weight of possibility, Emma realized this was not merely about uncovering truths, it was also about uniting a community. But tomorrow, she needed to gather her courage once more. The next step was to approach those who had expressed discomfort, to dig deeper and perhaps, create understanding where there had been reluctance. What new discoveries would she encounter as she sought answers? And would those answers bridge the gap that had widened between history and the present in her town? Emma knew she couldn't afford to shy away now. The journey was just beginning, and she was ready to confront it all head-on. The morning light filtered through Emma's window, spilling soft rays onto her face. She stirred awake, her mind still swirling with thoughts from the previous night. It felt as if the energy from the crowd had seeped into her bones, echoing the possibility of change. After getting dressed, Emma paced her small kitchen. Breakfast felt more like a ritual of fortifying her spirit than satisfying her hunger. Each sip of coffee seemed to give her more clarity. The frantic worry from last night had steadied, instead, she was filled with purpose. She had to continue the conversation, go beyond the surface and really dig into the discomfort that had, after all, sparked a dialogue. Her father sat at the dining table, thumbing through a newspaper, his brow still knitted with concern. Emma hesitated for a moment, then decided to voice her plans. "Dad, I want to talk to some people about the film. I know there were hurt feelings, but it's important we push through that." He looked up, surprise etched on his features. "It's not just about what people feel, Emma. Some truths can be really hard for folks to hear. You understand the risk you're taking, right?" "I do," she nodded, determination flooding her voice. "But if we don't talk about these things, how do we ever move forward?" His gaze lingered on her a moment longer, vulnerability cracking the sternness for just a heartbeat. "Just be careful, okay? Change can hurt, even when it's for the better." She offered a small smile, filled with both gratitude and determination. After breakfast, Emma grabbed her notebook and headed out. The breeze brushed against her skin as she walked toward the community center, her heart drumming with the anticipation of the unknown. When she arrived, a few familiar faces stood gathered in animated discussion. Emma took a deep breath before stepping closer. Jacob was among them, still buzzing with the energy of last night. He caught her eye. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, earning nods of encouragement from others. Emma felt a rush, the spark of something electric in the air. "I want to set up a panel discussion. Let us keep this conversation going. If we can dive into the hard parts, we might find some healing. Tom was there too, his arms crossed, but the lines of skepticism on his face had softened. You really think people will come out for that? We just watched you stir up a hornet's nest. We might get stung, Emma said, grinning at him. But that's how we grow. And honestly, it's time we faced the sting together. She saw a glance exchanged between Jacob and Tom, and for a moment, she felt united with them, not adversaries but allies. The weight of history hung thick in the air, but their resolve felt like a light pulling them forward. Count me in, Tom said, a hint of determination sparking behind his words. Jacob nodded along, and Emma felt a swell of hope. They could turn discomfort into dialogue. They spent the next few hours planning, brainstorming how to create a community space that welcomed varying opinions, even dissenting voices. Emma penned down ideas, her heart racing as the plan took shape. But in the back of her mind, a nagging worry lingered. What if the community didn't welcome this initiative? What if their fears were bigger than their hopes? As they wrapped up, Emma glanced around at her newfound allies. She realized she was not alone. They were all stepping into the unknown together. The excitement mingled with trepidation, creating a potent mix. On her walk home, the streets buzzing with life, Emma felt the weight of her next step. Would the community support her and embrace the change? As she rounded the corner, a new thought flashed. What if they faced backlash instead? Tomorrow would come with its challenges. And she was determined to meet them head-on. The question loomed large: could they handle the truths they were about to uncover together? Emma quickened her pace, excitement and anxiety swirling within her like a storm waiting to break. Emma woke up the next morning with a fresh resolve, the events of the previous day swirling brightly in her mind. A certain vibrancy hung in the air, filling her with hope as she brewed her morning coffee. She couldn't shake the feeling that today was the start of something transformative. After a quick breakfast, she pulled on her jacket, each movement driven by anticipation. Today was the day to spread the word about the panel discussion she hoped would bring the community together. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety course through her as she stepped outside into the chilly morning. The streets buzzed with energy, and Emma caught snippets of conversation from friends and neighbors. She stopped a moment to greet Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman with a warm smile. "Good morning, dear. Any news?" "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. I'm planning a community discussion tonight, and I'm hoping you'll come," Emma replied, her voice edged with eagerness. "Oh, sweetheart, you know I'm all about those conversations. I'll be there." Mrs. Thompson beamed back, her enthusiasm infectious. Fueled by that small victory, Emma continued down the street, stopping at a few local shops, excitedly sharing her plans. Some faces lit up with interest, while others looked hesitant. Each interaction chipped away at the worries that burdened her, the doubts whispering in her mind. By the time she reached the community center, a pocket of joy danced in her heart. Emma set up a small table with flyers, marking the time and topics for discussion. She found a few more members from her team already there, setting up chairs and adjusting the sound equipment. Jacob was especially enthusiastic, bouncing ideas back and forth with her. "What about having an open mic session? Letting people share their thoughts freely?" he suggested, his eyes shimmering with passion. "Absolutely. I want everyone to feel heard," Emma nodded, picturing the room filled with voices sharing their truths. But just as the excitement swelled, Tom entered, his face clouded over. "I just saw a few people outside. They are not happy about this discussion. They think we're stirring up trouble," he said, the tension in his voice unmistakable. Emma's heart tensed, but she took a deep breath. "We knew there would be resistance. But this is important. We can't let fear win, right?" Tom exchanged concerned looks with Jacob. Emma's stomach churned. The idea of backlash suddenly felt all-consuming. "We just have to remember our purpose. Let us focus on creating the space for healing," she urged, voice steadier than she felt. As they continued preparing, shadows of doubt crept in. What if the pushback was worse than she imagined? The thought echoed endlessly as she arranged the chairs, each one feeling heavier under pressure. When evening fell, the community center started to fill with people. They filtered in slowly, hesitation hanging thick in the air. Emma stood at the front, her heart pounding. She scanned the crowd, noticing familiar faces but also ones twisted with discomfort. Pushing through her nerves, she addressed the group. "I'm grateful to see all of you here tonight. This is a safe space to share, to listen, and to learn from each other, even when it's tough." One woman in the back raised her hand, skepticism etched across her face. "What makes you think this will actually help?" Emma's heart raced as she faced the question. Would they all see the value in raw conversations? What if this turned into an argument instead of a dialogue? Determined, she replied, "Because change doesn't happen when we stay silent. This is our chance to build connections even through our differences. It's hard work, but I believe it's worth it." The crowd shifted, a mix of nods and furrowed brows. Emma knew they were entering precarious territory, but she could feel a spark of hope igniting within her. Together, they had the power to face uncomfortable truths. Just as they finally took their seats, a sudden noise came from outside. It was a shout, sharp, angry. The crowd froze, all eyes darting toward the door as tension flooded the room. Emma felt her pulse quickening again. The moment of truth hovered dangerously close. "What did we just invite?" Jacob murmured, "Why-I-as she searched the crowd for encouragement, the weight of uncertainty pressed down like lead. Would they stand strong together, or would the fear drive them apart? Emma held her breath, realizing this was just the beginning of their journey. The door slammed open, a gust of cold air rushing in as a group of people stormed inside. Emma's breath hitched at the sight of three men, their faces tense and brandishing signs that read "Stop the lies." And no divisive talk here. The room filled with an electric mixture of fear and defiance. "Who let you in?" A voice boomed from the back. It was Sam, a longtime supporter of community initiatives. His voice carried authority, but the tremor betrayed his unease. The newcomers fixed their gazes on Emma. "You think bringing up old wounds will fix anything?" One of them spat, stepping forward. Emma could feel the heat of anger radiating from him. "Please." Emma called out, her voice breaking through the tension. "This isn't about reopening wounds, it's about healing them." The men laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the suddenly silent room. "Healing? By talking? You think words can change anything?" Emma's heart raced. She glanced around, seeking the support of the others in the room. Far from the frightened expressions, she noticed a group of teenagers in the front row, shifting uneasily but ready to listen. "We've carried these burdens long enough," Emma continued, trying to summon strength from within. "We're here to hear each other, to understand one another's struggles." Her voice trembled, but she pressed on. "This isn't a conversation that ends in anger, it's a beginning." A murmur spread through the crowd. Voices, soft but growing stronger, began to engage. "She's right," came a voice from the left. "We can't just bury our heads in the sand." The tension in the room shifted, a tiny crack forming in the wall of resistance. Emma felt a flicker of hope igniting once more, but the man who had spoken before scoffed. "And what if your understanding leads to chaos? We need order. Not all this feelings talk." The disdain dripped from his words like venom. "It's exactly the lack of feelings that got us here," Tom interjected, his face pale but determined. "Real change happens when we are brave enough to embrace the messy truths. We all have to take a step forward." The man's expression faltered for a moment, caught off guard. Emma seized the opening. "That's it. We might not agree on everything, but sitting in silence will never move us forward. What we need is dialogue. Listen, then speak." The crowd began to murmur, voices mingling, unclear yet charged with the energy of potential. People were weighing their options. Would they let fear triumph? Or would they embrace the risk of the unknown? Suddenly, a woman near the back stood up, eyes flashing with anger and a hint of vulnerability. "You want to talk about healing?" What about the everyday battles we face? The hunger for change that never seems to come? Her voice cut through the hesitation like a knife. Exactly. Someone else joined in. We're here to discuss ways to make the community better, not to be told we should stay quiet. That simple act of vulnerability sparked something deeper. It was as if a shield had been dropped, exposing the raw truths festering below the surface. Emma seized this moment, her voice steady now. Let us share our stories, she urged, looking each person in the eye. Let us listen. We all carry some pain, don't we? But together, we can find a way to heal. In the midst of discomfort, there was an inkling of solidarity. More raised their hands, willing to speak, their eyes open to the possibility of real connection. What started as an angry confrontation began to morph into something unexpectedly transformative, but just then, a new, harsher shout came from outside. You're endangering our community. The voice echoed ominously. Emma's heart sank, wondering if the love that was sprouting among the crowd could withstand the storm on the outside. Would they choose to stand together against the rage? As the calls grew louder and angrier, Emma felt dread clawing at her heart. Standing bold in the face of adversity was one thing, but would everyone else have the courage to do the same? The night was far from over, and the battles outside were closing in fast. Emma looked into the crowd, her heart racing as the tumult outside surged like a tidal wave. The once tentative murmurs transformed into a chorus of uncertainty and fear. People were shifting in their seats, some even glancing nervously at the doors as if the raw anger outside could seep in and engulf them whole. Stay strong, she urged, her voice pushing through the growing clamor. This is our moment to show that we are more than the anger that divides us. Let us show them their strength in our unity. The teenagers she had noticed earlier seemed to catch her fire. One bold young woman stood up, her hands shaking slightly but her eyes fierce. If they can shout, so can we. We deserve to be heard. That's right. A middle-aged man called out. We're not going to let threats silence us. We need to speak or it will only get worse. Emma felt hope blooming as she saw nods of agreement ripple through the crowd. It was as if a weight had lifted, and for the first time tonight, they were beginning to realize their collective power. But was it enough? A loud crash echoed from outside, causing the front row to jump. Emma's heart matched the intensity of the disruption, adrenaline coursed through her veins. She steadied her breath, reminding herself they were in this together. Listen. She called out, trying to regain focus amid the clamor. What we face tonight won't be easy, but facing it together is the first step. Who will stand and share? Hands shot up in different corners of the room. There was a tangle of voices rising, each story fighting for space. Emma pointed to a woman, visibly trembling but eager. Please, go ahead. We're here to listen. The woman stepped forward, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger. I grew up surrounded by violence. I've seen how keeping things silent only breeds more hatred. Can we break this cycle? Yes. Shouted another voice. Silence doesn't help, but our stories can. Let us talk. As one after another stepped forward to share their experiences, comments flashed across the room. An unseen bond was forming in the realization that they all felt the weight of the past. With each voice, Emma felt the atmosphere shift, the heaviness lightening bit by bit. Yet, the shouts of anger outside continued clashing with the harmony building within. A crucial moment was brewing, and Emma sensed that clarity would lead to either a breakthrough or a collapse. Then, with a roar, the door shook as someone banged on it from the outside. Emma's heart dropped. They're scared of what can happen when we stand together, she thought. But were they ready to confront that fear openly? Can we stand against their anger and rage? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper now. Can we choose love and understanding instead? The crowd pressed in closely, faces taut with the weight of emotions as they digested her question. Would they take that leap into the unknown? Just as she began to think hope might prevail, a figure burst through the door, a young man, wild-eyed and panting. "It's worse than we thought," he gasped, and the murmurs silenced instantly. Emma's stomach churned. What news could be incoming that would test their resolve like this? The night ahead loomed large and uncertain, and she knew the hardest struggles were still ahead. "What do you mean?" she pressed, stepping forward with clenched fists. His words hung heavy in the air. "The anger outside, it's just the beginning. They're organizing to shut you down." Fear surged through the crowd, but Emma couldn't let it take root. She steadied herself for the next question, the one that would reveal their true strength. "How will we respond?" she asked, her heart racing with the urgency of their moment. As the murmurs rolled once more, she realized she had to lead them into the unknown together. Would they find their courage? Or would the fear sweeping the night drown out every flicker of hope? The air crackled with tension. Everyone was looking at Emma now, waiting for her to guide them. She could feel their eyes searching her for answers, for strength. "What do we do now?" a voice called from the back of the room, urgent and filled with anxiety. Emma turned, her heart heavy with the weight of her responsibility. She had to be the one to steer them through this storm. "We gather our stories," she said, rallying her courage. "We share them louder than any anger outside. We show them that we will not be silenced. We are here. We exist." A wave of determination swept through the crowd. One by one, people began to shout their stories, their fears, and their dreams. The tension in the room shifted, transforming into a passionate chorus of voices declaring their humanity. Emma felt the warmth of their unity enveloping her. "Each word we speak is a step forward," Emma encouraged, her voice strong. "We can't change the past, but we can shape our future." A man stepped forward, his brow furrowed and his fists clenched. "I lost my brother to violence. If we don't speak, it'll happen again to someone else. We have to fight." "Yes," came another voice. "Let them hear us." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She never expected to witness such strength, such resilience in the face of fear. The anger outside seemed to fade in comparison to the courage blooming within. Suddenly, the door rattled again, this time with more force. It felt like a threat looming over them. "They're coming," someone whispered, voice trembling. Emma took a deep breath, and her heart raced, but she stood tall. "We can face them," she declared, "but only if we face what's inside us first. Let us share our truths and release the burden of silence." With renewed vigor, voices grew bolder. An older woman stood, her gaze fierce. "I carry years of pain, years of watching my community suffer, but no more. I'm here to fight for hope." The crowd erupted in agreement, sounds of clapping and cheering resonating through the room. Hope was alive, it pulsated like a heartbeat, fierce and steady, but just as the crescendo of encouragement reached its peak, the door banged open and bristling figures poured in, engulfed in shadows and fury. Emma's heart plummeted. "Stop this!" a voice roared. "You think your words matter? You think this will change anything?" Fear rushed back into the room, causing the voices to falter momentarily. Emma's mind raced, searching for words that could reignite the flame of bravery flickering within them. This was a critical moment. Would they fall apart, or rise together? Have you ever felt trapped? Have you ever wanted to shout your truth? She cried out, stepping towards the intruders, defiantly refusing to shrink away. As she faced them, uncertainty danced in the eyes of her audience. Emma could almost hear their hearts beating against the backdrop of angry shouts. "Together we are stronger. Together we can show them that our voices hold power." Tension hung thick in the air. Would they rise to the challenge, or would they let fear push them into the dark? As she looked into the faces surrounding her, one question echoed through the tumultuous atmosphere: would they choose to stand together or linger in silence? The outcome teetered on a precipice, and Emma knew that this moment could define everything. Emma's heart pounded as she held her ground, the angry voices of the intruders swirling around her like a storm. She could feel the weight of the crowd's fear pressing down on her, but it only fueled her resolve. "We have a choice," she shouted, her voice steadying amidst the cacophony. "We choose to speak. We choose to be heard." The figures hesitated, momentarily taken aback by her fierce spirit. Emma seized the opportunity. "What are you afraid of?" she pressed, her eyes darting to the faces around her, encouraging their silent support. "Your power is built on silence and fear. But we are breaking that silence. We will not be intimidated." One of the intruders stepped forward, his features cut with anger, but even he seemed uncertain now. "You think your stories can change anything?" he spat. But his voice wavered just a touch, giving Emma the opening she needed. "Yes," she replied, passion igniting her words. "Our stories can heal. They can unite us. Every voice matters. With every story shared, we reclaim our power." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Emma sensed their hesitation transforming into determination again, their collective resolve building like a wave ready to crash. A woman near the front spoke up. "I lost my job because I refused to be silenced. My daughter was bullied because we stood up for what was right. We will not cower anymore." The room erupted in encouragement, with cheers and claps echoing off the walls. The intruder's presence began to feel smaller, less threatening. "Let them hear you. Let them feel your strength," Emma urged, her heart racing as she saw the crowd light up with shared purpose. It was contagious. The energy surged, drawing more and more people into the call for unity. "Together! Together!" they chanted, voices rising in defiance. The shadows of the intruders shrank as the crowd transformed their fear into a chorus of courage. Emma stepped back slightly, eyes widening as the tide turned. She had changed the atmosphere. But just then, one figure among them, a towering presence with an ominous glare, shouted, "You're only making it worse for yourselves. You're inviting chaos." Emma met his gaze straight on, refusal engraved on her features. "No," she shot back. "We're embracing our truth. We're fighting for a future where we can live without fear." A collective gasp resonated around her, and she felt the emotion swelling, anticipation and bravery intertwined. This was turning into something bigger than she could have imagined. A young man stepped forward, shaking with intensity. "I have a voice. I have a story," he stammered, his courage flickering like a candle but pushing through. "I faced violence, and I will not let it win." The room erupted when he spoke, a wave of sound that filled the air like a buoyant anthem. Emma felt her heart soar. People were letting their pain and anger out, grasping at the hope they needed. As claps and cheers soared, it was impossible to ignore the shadowy figures starting to retreat, their confidence dwindling under the crushing weight of unyielding wills. Emma could only hope this would mark the beginning of a new chapter in their fight for change. "Do you feel it?" she whispered to those closest to her, pride swelling in her chest. "This is our moment. This is where change begins." But could they truly hold on to this power, or would fear return for them all? Emma clenched her fists, knowing they were on the edge of something monumental. They were in a fragile moment, but as their voices rose, Emma realized one thing: the fight was far from over. The crowd's energy was electric, a palpable force that buzzed around Emma as their voices soared high. Each cheer fueled her spirit, igniting a fire she hadn't known was there. It was a whirlwind of bravery, and in that moment, she felt unbreakable, but just as an uplifting wave surged over them, a cold dread twisted in her gut. The towering intruder with the fiery glare challenged once more, "You're only making promises you can't keep. Hope doesn't change reality." Emma took a deep breath, grounding herself amidst the chaos. "You're wrong," she called back, her voice echoing with strength. "Hope is the first step. It's the spark that drives us forward. We will change this reality together." Her words hung in the air, a challenge as much for herself as for the intruders. She scanned the faces around her, each one reflecting the struggle they had endured. There was hurt, yes, but beneath it all, she saw determination growing. They were ready to embrace the fight. Another woman stepped forward, fire in her eyes. We've been knocked down for too long. Each of us has a story that deserves to be told. And if we stand together, they won't be able to erase us. Cheers erupted again, loud enough to drown out their opposition. The intruders seemed to flinch, their once powerful presence now withering under the force of shared stories. Emma felt a rush of relief, but it mingled with anxiety. What if their newfound courage was fleeting? Would it crumble in the face of real adversity? Suddenly, from the back of the room, a voice rose high above the others. An older man, his face lined with the hardships of time, stepped into view. My daughter was taken from us because we wouldn't be quiet. They thought they could silence us forever, but guess what? I'm here to scream her name until my last breath. His raw emotion struck deep, piercing through the moment like a light cutting through fog. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting into a collective roar. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. It was not just defiance, it was love, loss, and a relentless desire for change. Your stories are your strength. She shouted, overwhelmed by the surge of emotion filling the space. Share them. Let them drown out the fear. One by one, faces from the crowd began to emerge, sharing their stories. Some whispered, others shouted. They spoke of loss, of pain, of resilience. Each voice added power to the collective, weaving a rich tapestry of their shared struggle. Emma's heart raced as they transformed the fear into something tangible, a movement forged from shared scars, but then, behind her, the door creaked open wider. Emma turned, a chilling wave washing over her as she saw fresh faces spilling in. More shadowy figures, but these looked more menacing, ready to engage. Their presence struck like a thunderclap through the atmosphere of hope they had just created. Why are they back? Whispered someone near Emma, panic creeping into their eyes. No, we can't lose this ground, Emma thought, feeling the urgency rising in her chest. Don't let fear win again. She stepped forward, her voice shaking but unyielding. We will rise above. We've found our voices. What they don't understand is that we are stronger together. As the tension escalated, Emma felt exhilaration blending with fear. Would their voices stand strong against this new wave of intimidation? The line had been drawn, and the battle was about to ignite. Would they uncover the strength within themselves to fight back, or would silence reclaim its heavy grip? The moment of truth was fast approaching, and Emma braced herself. She could feel it brewing, a storm of emotions ready to break loose. The shadows of the intruders loomed larger, their intent darkening the vibrant spirit that had taken root in the room. Emma felt the weight of every heartbeat, 1,000 questions slammed into her heart. Would this moment their breakthrough collapse into chaos? But something inside her surged, refusing to let fear take the lead. We cannot be silenced. She called out, standing tall. What we have built tonight cannot unravel. We stand for each other. The energy in the room shifted, heads turned, eyes met in a bond of understanding. People began to rise from their seats, their spirits igniting like 100 fireflies in the dark. A surge of voices spoke out. We're not afraid. We will share our pain and our triumphs. Emma felt hope blossom, feeding the collective fire of courage. The intruders shifted uneasily, unsure of how to counter the power radiating from the crowd. They expected division, but instead, they found unity. The crowd surged forward, a wave of solidarity crashing against the shadows. Go back to where you came from. We know our truth. Shouted one brave voice, echoing through the room like a battle cry. Laughter bubbled up, a mix of nervousness and defiance, and piled into a wall of strength that pressed against the intruders. Emma pushed forward, heart racing. Your anger can't drown us. We will vacuum this fear out of our town, together. This is not just our fight, it's a fight for our future. The intruders hesitated, they hadn't expected this response. The tension was palpable, and Emma could see it in their eyes, the realization that unity spiraled mightier than anger. Strength in unity. A familiar voice called out from the crowd. Jacob, standing shoulder to shoulder with others, raised a fist. We must embrace the vulnerability if we want to step forward. And with that, Emma felt a pulse swell within her, a rhythm of courage, a visceral realization that each time they shared their truths, they could change the narrative. Rather than one defeating another, they illuminated the collective struggle. Suddenly, tears streamed from the eyes of the older man who had spoken earlier about his daughter. I refuse to bury my pain in silence any longer, he cried. Our voices are our history, they are our power. With a fierce heart, he stepped toward the intruders. Emma held her breath, unsure of what might happen next. The men began to back away, their bravado faltering under the weight of raw vulnerability cascading through the room. As if synchronized, the crowd turned toward Emma, who felt more alive than ever. What she had once feared had transformed into resilience, and she finally knew what to do. Let us share, she urged, motioning for the crowd to keep the stories coming. She opened the floodgates. Let each truth, each pain, and triumph be a brick in the wall we build against fear. One after another, people spoke, their voices handing over intangible shields of courage. Stories poured like water breaking through a dam, washing over the fears that had divided them for so long. The air was thick with stories, and Emma felt every single one resonate. Then, with every swell, something magnificent happened, a ripple of realization. The people who had initially come to disrupt, those intruders, caught themselves in the tide of emotion swirling around them. Uncertainty hung visibly on their faces, and for a fleeting moment, Emma thought they might retreat altogether, but then, the glimmer of understanding shifted into something deeper. A hand, shaking but resolute, raised from among the intruders. What if we could learn something here? A voice called. Emma turned, heart pounding. What if we could listen? Gasps rushed through the crowd like wildfire, and suddenly, the boundaries began to dissolve. Emma stepped back as she saw the potential for change unfold, feeling as if they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. Let us share a circle, Emma suggested, her eyes fixed on the intruder who had shown a glimmer of hope. Let us become what we fear. A community united by our stories, our struggles, and our willingness to listen. And just like that, they redefined the narrative. As people began to shift around, ready to engage, the energy transformed. The defenses began to crumble, and they stood on equal ground, no longer adversaries but fellow travelers on a journey toward understanding. As Emma surveyed the scene, her heart soared. This was it, the moment she had been fighting for. Threads of connection were weaving together, stitched by honesty, empathy, and the fearlessness to embrace the hard truths. It was a tapestry of resilience, and they were cloaked in the warmth of hope. As they began to share and listen, Emma realized this was the beginning, not just for her town but for herself. They had taken the hardest step, choosing vulnerability, choosing dialogue. It wasn't just about the confrontation they faced tonight, it was the forging of a new path ahead, and Emma knew she would face it with unyielding passion. And as those life-giving conversations filled the room, the fear retreated, and hope filled its place. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with pride, ready to continue this journey together. It wouldn't be easy, but the power of stories had turned a tide they would never look back from. Now, the world outside still needed to be addressed, but Emma knew they were equipped to take that next leap forward. Together, they were stronger, and this community was just beginning to uncover the depth of what they could truly achieve. If you felt the stirring of change within you, this is the moment to show your support. Hit that subscribe button immediately so you don't miss the incredible stories ahead. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more hearts. Share your reactions in the comments, let us know how this story transformed you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this journey. The time for unity is now, it's up to us to make a difference.